You know, the Bible teaches that in the last days, right, the days that we're in right now, it'll be like the days of Noah. In Matthew chapter 24, he says, Jesus is prophesying, right? And he's saying, as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For just as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and being given in marriage, until the very day when Noah went into the ark. And they did not know or understand until the flood came and swept them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be, right? So let's go back there and look at Genesis see what exactly it says about the time of Noah and the flood. You know, it says of Noah when he was born, it says when Lamech was 182 years old, that's his father, a son was born, right? And he named him Noah, one who shall bring relief and comfort from our work in the toil of our hands due to the ground being cursed, right? You know, before Adam and Eve sinned, they had everything provided. But after they sinned, they toiled the ground by the sweat of their brow, right? And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But, so he tells Noah to build this ark, right, for all the animals out of gopher wood. You know, he overlays it, right, inside and out with pitch. But in chapter 7, Genesis 7, and the Lord said to Noah, come with all your household into the ark, for I've seen you to be righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast you shall receive and take with you 7 pairs, male and its mate. Of the beasts that are not clean, a pair of each kind, male and his mate. Also the birds of the air, 7 pairs, a male and female, to keep seed alive over all the earth. For in 7 days I will cause to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living substance and thing that I have made I will destroy and wipe away from the face of the earth. Noah did all the Lord commanded him. That's important. Noah did all the Lord commanded him. You know, we should do that. And Noah and his sons and his wives and sons' wives with them went to the ark because of the waters of the flood, the animals, of the clean animals and animals that are not clean, of the birds and fowls and everything that creeps on the ground. They went in 2 by 2 with Noah into the ark, male and female, as God had commanded them. Okay, now listen to this. After the 7 days, the flood waters came upon the earth. In the year 600 of Noah's life, in the 17th day of the 2nd month, that same day the fountains of the great deep were broken up and burst forth. The windows of the heavens were opened, and it rained for 40 days, right? And 40 nights. Let's write that down. So he went into the ark, right, with the animals for 7 days, right? And at the end of 7 days, the windows of heavens were opened, and it rained for 40 days and nights. Okay? All right. Now, go to Exodus chapter 24. Verse 12. And the Lord said to Moses, come up to me into the mountain and be there, and I will give you the tables of stone with the law and the commandments which I have written, that you may teach them. So Moses rose up with Joshua, his attendant. Moses went up into the mountain of God. He said to the elders, tarry here for us until we come back to you. Remember, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a cause, let him go with them. Then Moses went up into the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, And the glory of the Lord rested on the Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the seventh day, God called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the glory of the Lord appeared to the Israelites like devouring fire at the top of the mountain. Moses entered in the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and nights. So he was at the mountain, at the base, for 7 days, and on the seventh day, God called him up, and he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights, right? Okay. Go to Daniel chapter 9. Hang with me here. I want to show you something. You'll find it really interesting. As I did. Now, in Daniel chapter 9, Daniel is fasting and repenting and, for his people, interceding. And, in verse 23, at the beginning of your prayers, the word went forth, and I've come to tell you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, consider the matter and understand the vision. Right? 70 weeks of years are decreed upon your people and upon your holy city. So, Daniel's people, the Jews, and upon the holy city. He calls Jerusalem the holy city, right? To finish and put an end to transgression, to seal up, make full the measure of sin, to purge away and make reconciliation for sin, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint a holy of holies. In the 70 weeks of years, this is what God is going to do for the Jews. Okay? And we know that after, in verse 25 and 26, it tells you that after 7 weeks of years and 62 weeks of years, which is 483 years, the anointed one, Jesus, was cut off. He was crucified, right? And so now we're waiting for this last week of years, or last week. Daniel's 69 weeks have passed. Jesus was crucified. We have a 1900 and something year gap, nearly 2,000 years gap. And we're looking for the beginning of Daniel's 70th week, the final week. Well, in a week is 7 days, right? So he goes in verse 27, he shall enter into a strong and firm covenant with the many for 1 week, right? Well, 1 week in this prophecy equals 7 years, but he calls it a week, and a week is 7 days. But in this prophecy, 1 week is equal to 7 years because they're weeks of years, or 77s, right? So this is 1/7. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and offering to cease, and on the wing and pinnacle of abomination shall come one who makes desolate, until the full determined end is poured out on the desolator. Now, we always thought, it seems logical, that this is Daniel's 70th week, right? But actually, no. The he that's entering into the strong and firm covenant with the many for 1 week is the Antichrist, right? Remember, the 7 years? And he's entering into the covenant. Already have the covenant, he's just entering into it. He's not even really the Antichrist, as we call him, yet, until the midst of the week, right? And we know that in Daniel 11:31, armed forces of his, and they go in and they take away the burnt offering, right? And they set up the abomination of desolation 1,290 days later, down here. So you have 1 week, right? 7 days, and then 40 days. Well, let me show you that precisely so you aren't confused about it. I think I'm making something up here. In Daniel chapter 12, he says in verse 11, and from the time that the continual burnt offering is taken away, right? Down here, continual burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, so it shall be 1,290 days. See, we got it marked here. From the time the burnt offering is taken away, see, they build the temple, right? And Antichrist goes into it. It's all a counterfeit, right? He's trying to beat God to the punch and deceive everybody, like that's what he does, right? Satan's the seducer and deceiver of all the world over, right? All the nations. So 1,290 days from here to the end of the 7 days or 70th week, right? So, as it was in the days of Noah, right? 7 days, right? And he says, blessed is he who comes through the 1,335 days. All right? Well, you have 45 days from the abomination of desolation to the 1,335 days. All right? But he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be, the days of the coming of the Son of Man. In the days of Noah, they went into the ark for 7 days, right? And then it rained. He opened the windows of heaven, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, same thing at the end of time. Well, it's 45 days. Yeah, but that statue has to stand some amount of time. And it doesn't make any sense in the world having 45 days as the Great Tribulation. Because Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, he says, verse 15, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not to be, right? Actually, Mark 13:14 says that. Spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, right? That'd be in the temple, right? And he says, let those in Judea flee to the mountains. Southern Israel. Let those in Judea when you see the abomination, desolation. Right? He's speaking to Jews. Okay? And in verse 21, he says, for then there shall be great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world till now, no, and never will be again. If those days had not been shortened, no human being would endure and survive. Well, we know that the Great Tribulation is the 7 bowls. We've taught this many times in other teachings, but the 7 bowls of God's wrath, right? This brings God's wrath, a statue in the temple, an idol in the temple, at least an idol. Who knows what it'll be in this age and time with AI and everything else. But the statue stands for 5 days, and you have 40 days of wrath. So 740, just like the days of Noah, 740. If you put the abomination of desolation back here, right, when from the time the continual burnt offering is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, if you use it as a conjunction, the and, you have them both at the same place, you have 1,290 days and 1,335 days, and you don't have 740. It doesn't make any sense, right? But when you read it right and you have this, that is a preposition, and this is down here, 7 days, 40 days, as was the days of Noah.